fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery with your hosts, Eric Shapiro, David North Martino, John Copenhaver, and Al Warren. Heard on KCAA 106.5 FM Los Angeles,
102.3 FM Riverside,
and 105.0 AM Palm Springs.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren. Miss Jennifer Ann Gordon Peaches is here.
Hi, Alan. And thank you for welcoming me, Peaches. I guess that's my new nickname as of today, and I'm going to embrace it.
Yeah.
I think it really offsets my horror side.
Yeah. It's bright and shiny. It's spring, summer. Just beautiful. Right?
All of the things that I just embody.
Yeah. Well, that's
as a goth, pale, green-haired girl.
Well, that's just your drag, so to speak, right? You know what goes
that's
on.
just the brand.
Yeah, that's the brand. We know what goes on behind the scenes, you know.
Behind the scenes, I love the foxtrot and Peaches.
Well, yeah. Peachy Foxtrot. Well, there you go. I learn something new every day. I don't know if I like to learn every day, but I guess it's a good thing.
No, it seems exhausting.
Well, let's see. We have got a science fiction writer with us today. Fantastic writer. He's going to talk about his new project, The Download It. So, Robert J. Sawyer, thank you for coming on the show.
What a pleasure to be back. Thank you for having me.
Always. So how have you been lately? What's been going on with you the last, since we talked to you last?
Well, I have just arrived in Calgary, Alberta, where it is snowing brutally. And the day before, I was in Orlando, Florida, at something called ICFA, the International Conference on the Fantastic in the Arts. It is the leading academic symposium related to science fiction, fantasy, and horror literature. And by pure coincidence, I believe, Alan, I will contest this to my dying day, is held in Florida during March break, not because of the weather, certainly not because it's a poolside resort, but because it is most conducive of a venue for spirited conversation. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Do you have to be invited to this? Because, golly, as somebody who's in a very cold place, I would enjoy being in a symposium.
I will hook you up. Believe me, I'll give you the information who to contact. The academics, you see, managed to convince their university departments to pay for them to go to Florida in March break to attend this. But they invite a limited number of what they call creative professionals, meaning writers like ourselves or artists or editors, to also come. And I've been going. This was my 20th year, although I haven't gone every year, of attending ICFA, the International Conference on the Fantastic in the Arts.
That is a really good gig to have.
I think so, yes.
So you really enjoy going to a lot of these events and meetings and get-togethers and all that stuff. How many do you do a year?
Well, because I have a new book coming out this year, I've got a very full schedule, probably 18 events that I'm doing this year. Last year, my big event I was lucky enough, was career capstone honor to be one of the two guests of honor at the World Science Fiction Convention, the 81st WorldCon, as it's called. And it was held for the first time ever in China, in fact, in Chengdu, China. Liu Cixin, who is very much in the news right now because he wrote The Three-Body Problem. Currently, the adaptation is airing, I think, on Netflix, was the co-guest of honor with me, and we'd been friends since 2007. That was definitely the highlight of my past year, was this huge trip to China. But yes, I'm gregarious by nature. Not all writers are. Many writers are quite introverted and shy. But I work alone, and so I live for these opportunities to get out. I do, of course, like meeting my readers and signing and autographing books. That's wonderful. But I have to say, the real thrill for me is sitting down with other writers, with my colleagues, and talking shop and just, complaining about editors and agents and the vicissitudes of the publishing industry, as we all do, right, when we get together as writers.
Oh, no, we never do that. Certainly, I've never done that in the bar at a convention.
Exactly.
No. Oh, we love this industry.
Love this industry. You know, it's like the old saying, I love humanity. It's people I can't stand, right?
Yeah. You said it right there. Well, that's interesting. What are you doing in Calgary then? What's going on there? What would you deal with that big winter there for? What's going on there?
Of course, I didn't know when I booked the tickets, but one of my very best friends here, Randy McCharles, founded a decade ago a conference called When Words Collide, which is a multi-genre conference for writers of the genres. So science fiction, fantasy, and horror, of course, but also mystery, thriller, romance, and being as how this is Alberta, Western as well. And although the conference doesn't take place until August, I visit Randy several times a year, and we have writing retreats. So we're actually getting a bunch of the local writers together on the weekend, and we're going to hack away at our manuscripts and then have that kind of shop talk discussion that I alluded to a moment ago that I enjoy so much over the meal. So visiting friends, but doing some writing, which makes it, ta-da, a tax deductible.
Well, even better.
Even better.
So you've got a new novel coming out, and it's called The Downloaded, and I guess you've got the Audible out. So explain what exactly you've got going on here with this new project.
Yeah, so Audible has learned the lesson that Netflix learned a little bit earlier. Audible, like Netflix, started out as exclusively distributors of content created by other people. And Netflix, of course, started out sending DVDs through the mail, right? But now is one of the biggest producers of original content, because that's where the money really is owning the content that you distribute. So Audible decided they wanted to do a science fiction original production, and they came to me to do it, gave me a very handsome deal. All they wanted was 6 months of exclusivity. So essentially, this is my 25th novel, but they wanted to have it 6 months before it comes out on print. So back on October 26th, it did come out in the audio version, and a little less, than 2 months from now, on May 7th, it'll be out in print and ebook versions, and you can either go listen right now on Audible, and if you have an Audible account, it's free to listen to it. You don't have to use one of your monthly credits. It's an Audible original. Just add it to your account and listen. The ebook or the print, you got to pay me for that, right? But the Audible one you can get for free. And I'll tell you, when I set out to do this, they were the best creative partner I've ever had. I've thoroughly enjoyed working with them. And they asked me and the director, we're both Canadians, who we would like to have narrate the finished product. And we originally said, 2 years ago, well, we want Brendan Fraser, I think is perfect for the lead role. And then just over a year ago, of course, he won the Academy Award for Best Actor for The Whale. Well, at that point, we said, okay, here's our B list. We know we can't get Brendan anymore. And the Audible people said, why not? And we said, because his price must have just gone through the roof. And they said, that's true. We will pay it. So we got Brendan Fraser, Academy Award winner. We also got Luke Kirby to be the secondary lead, Emmy Award winner for many other great roles, but playing Lenny Bruce on The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, excuse me. There's my Canadianism slipping through, a little Freudian Canadianism, Mrs. Maple, I said. Mrs. Maisel is what I meant to say. And that's where we stand at the moment with it. It's out in this audio version, and the print version comes out in May 7th, in a couple of months, excuse me.
I love it. So before we went live, I had mentioned that I was listening to the Audible version, which is absolutely fantastic. It goes above and beyond what people think of as an audio book. Like, this is a full radio play, is how it sounds.
100%.
It's amazing. So you wrote this originally knowing it would be an Audible original. Was it a different process for you to write something strictly for Audible first? Or did you just write the novel?
Absolutely. Very interesting that you should say that. Radio play analogy, because the director is Gregory Sinclair, who was one of the senior radio drama producers and directors for CBC Radio, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, back when the CBC had radio drama. And I've known Greg for almost 20 years. I had done some radio drama for the CBC. So when Audible got me, they wanted to get Greg. We've worked together. And it's very interesting because originally I was to script it as radio drama with interactivity between the characters. And then the COVID-19 crisis hit, and Audible said, flag on the play, our COVID protocol coordinators are saying, we don't think we can get more than one actor into the studio at a time. So I ended up writing it, and you've been listening to 3 of the episodes, 3 of the chapters that have single characters giving their testimony to a judge. You don't know who the judge is. It's going to be a big surprise when you find out there's a judge that they're giving their testimony to. And I wrote it as straight narration with one voice. And then Greg said at the end, you know, even though if we can't get all these actors together, I'm going to splice it all together into proper radio drama. And he did an enormous amount of work. So we have 9 different actors, and all of them are appropriately interleaved in the scenes that they appear in. Enormous amount of post-production. When they say, I'll fix it in post, Greg really did for this show.
How long did it take them from the original recording to do all of that work? Do you know?
It was months. It was months. The whole thing was delayed. Unfortunately, I got sick. COVID happened. We had the show, the whole thing should have been out. They commissioned it from me in 2020, and it should have been out in 2022, beginning of 2022, instead of, the end of 2023, and with the book coming in 2024. But that said, I knew that, I'm a writer and I've got my intellectual property, the downloaded. I wanted to structure it in such a way that it would work really well as an immersive audible experience. And as you've indicated, you think that it does, and also work really well on the printed page as a lyrical, moving prose novel. And people will judge for themselves, but Publishers Weekly just gave it a starred review, which is their highest honor. A starred review meaning a work of exceptional merit for the print novel version. So I had a juggling act to pull off to make it work in both media, but I honestly think that I did succeed at it.
So did you have to do a rewrite to make it into more of a novel?
No, I did not. I did not. It was a challenge to make it work in both forms, but I was conscious of that challenge from page 1. So no, I did not do a rewrite. The novel obviously has he says and she says, and sometimes he said wryly or she said sarcastically. Those tags, of course, were dropped when Greg interleaved the actors together, but hopefully the actor sounds sarcastic instead of me having to say he said sarcastically. Luke Kirby or Brendan Fraser will say, oh yeah, well, that's your opinion, right? Sarcastically in the recording.
Well, so let's talk about this, the downloaded. What's the premise of it?
So I always say when I teach science fiction writing that no science fiction work is about the year it's supposedly set in, whether that's 2001 or 3955 when Planet of the Apes takes place. It's about the year in which it's written. And when I pitched this to the good folks at Audible, we were just at the beginning of COVID-19. And so we were all essentially, it seemed to me, metaphorically starting to live our lives in an uploaded realm. We weren't going into the office physically. We were telecommuting. We weren't seeing our friends at the bar. We were chatting with them online, and so on and so forth. But we all hoped that this plague of COVID-19 would end shortly. Well, it didn't end shortly. In fact, it's still with us. But eventually, I knew we would have to metaphorically download, return to dealing with flesh and blood human beings face to face. So the downloaded is my science fiction metaphorical treatment of that. It's about 2 groups of people, astronauts preparing for Earth's first interstellar voyage, and prisoners who are given an opportunity to have their consciousness uploaded into a virtual reality where it'll seem for them that their 20-year prison sentences will take 20 years to pass. But in the real world, only 18 months will pass, and they'll be able to return to their families and their children and so forth, hopefully rehabilitated. But as in all novels and exciting adventures, something ensues. They don't get to download either the astronauts or the prisoners when they should have. 500 years pass, and these 2 very disparate groups, astronauts with the macho right stuff, and prisoners, most of whom, in fact, were murderers, being forced to live together in this 500-year down the road reality again. That's what the downloaded's all about.
Fascinating. So how do you get into the mindset of your characters? Like, let's say the convicted murderers. How do you write their characters?
Well, I'm glad that when you had to choose between astronauts, highly trained and successful individuals, or convicted murderers being most unlike me, you chose the murderers as the example.
Yeah.
I mentioned at the beginning, I go to a lot of writers' festivals, and way back, maybe 15 years ago, I was invited to a writers' festival or literary festival in Whitehorse in Yukon Territory, Canada, the far north. And they said to me when I was there, we have a program where you can go and visit the prison here. And we have writers who come, you go and spend a day with the prisoners, many of whom have stories to tell. They never intended to be career criminals. They never intended to get caught. And now they're having to reflect here in prison on it. And they like someone who can mentor them to tell their stories. So I went and did that. And it was one of the most rewarding experiences of my life, because these are the sort of people, you're right, that I would not normally have any interaction with. One hopes never to run into a violent criminal in one's real existence. But I became immediately aware of how complex the web of circumstances is. And sadly, in the Whitehorse, in the far north, a lot of these people who are career criminals, there's a lot of fetal alcohol syndrome. They were born, to mothers who had drunk excessively. They never had a chance in life, and they have stories to tell. And I came to be very interested in the whole concept of why we imprison people, why we perhaps disproportionately imprison people from certain demographics, and what, if any, good throwing people behind bars does in terms of rehabilitation. So that real life experience, a writer even of science fiction, fantasy, or horror draws enormously on their own life experience. That real life experience for me was what compelled me. I'd wanted for years to write a story about prisoners, but you wait until the right project, the right story, the right opportunity comes along to actually use the material.
That's funny. I thought when I first asked and you said you went to writing conference, I thought you were going to say that's where convicted murderers hang out.
Yeah, they may indeed. I very famously, Anne Perry, of course, who was a very famous writer of mysteries, when she had been young, had been convicted in Australia of her and her girlfriend at the time had convicted killed the girl's mother. And, they were sentenced as juveniles and served their sentences. And Anne went on to be a multi-best-selling, New York Times best-selling author. And yes, I've been at many a conference that Anne was at. Her story is told, in that, I'm drawing a blank, it'll come to me in a minute, but the famous movie
Beautiful Creatures.
Beautiful Creatures it's a real life
It's my
story.
favorite true crime.
That's
my
right.
favorite true crime case.
Absolutely. I mean, Anne Perry, of course, is a pen name. Her real last name was the name under which she committed the crime. And it wasn't until 1994, so 30 years ago now, that it came out that in 1954, 40 years before that, she had been involved in actually killing somebody. So yeah, you can meet a convicted murderer. Flip side is at this conference I mentioned that happens in August in Calgary, When Words Collide. One of the speakers every year is a homicide detective, because so many mystery writers, of course, are just sponges for any tales of how, in fact, you really do catch real murderers in the real world.
I think that's my favorite part of going to crime conventions, honestly, is the morning lecturer who comes and talks to you while you're all eating eggs about crime scene photography and forensics, and you're just showing gross slides.
That's right. It's such an education.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with over easy eggs.
Yeah.
That's right. And writers,
Yes.
what I say about being a writer, especially a science fiction writer, but it probably applies to all kinds of science fiction writer, is I am like a perpetual grad student who gets to change my thesis topic as often as I wish. If I was a real grad student, I'd have to do my very narrow bit of research. But I get to be, one day I'm a quantum physicist. The next day I'm a paleoanthropologist. The day after that, I'm a moral philosopher. The day after that, I'm talking about the penal system, the prison system. And all of us who are writers, you ask, where do you get your ideas? Research, and more research. The world is full of fascinating contradictions and amazing people, all of whom you can, just suck into your vacuum cleaner maw and turn out into fictional characters in fictional situations.
So do your ideas come from you originally having something in your head thinking, oh, I want to know more about this. And then you research it and
Yeah.
then get the idea? Or,
Yeah.
oh, so it really is like the egg before the chicken, I think.
For me, it is. I actually give a talk at some of these different writer seminars that we talk about here, called a thematic approach to writing. And it's a top-down approach where you start with your topic. Your topic might be genetics, and then research the heck out of genetics until you find a theme. I did a novel about genetics called Frameshift. The theme I came up with out of all the research was the only thing that makes sense in an era where we can now do predictive genetic testing of what things you will get and what things you won't get in terms of disease and ailments as your life goes on, is socialized medicine. Now, that may be a contentious statement. To some, that's fine. It's perfectly reasonable for a novel to be contentious. But the thematic statement, I had no idea what I wanted to say. I just knew genetics. Well, I remember a tiny bit from high school, but that was half a century ago. What can I learn? What's new? What's exciting? And out of that, the theme comes, and out of the theme, the characters come, and out of the characters, the novel comes. And, you know, the particular novel I alluded to, Frameshift, nominated for the Hugo, won Japan's top science fiction award, won Spain's top science fiction award. But it started not with a character, but with a topic that I researched the heck out of.
So how do you get into the setting, the location, like this one here, being that they were downloaded and you've got, you know, space and earth and all this stuff, you got all these things going on. How do you describe or write the setting?
So for the downloaded, I ended up setting the actual place where they're uploaded at a quantum computing facility. Well, Waterloo, Ontario, Canada, they actually call themselves the Waterloo area Quantum Valley. It's a play on Silicon Valley where, you know, traditional computing is headquartered. Waterloo, Ontario is an absolute world leader in quantum computing. But the intriguing thing about it is that it is entirely surrounded by an old order Mennonite community, people who shun technology. And I'm lucky enough to be friends with Mike Lazaridis. Mike Lazaridis was the co-inventor of the BlackBerry, if you remember the world's first true smartphone, the BlackBerry, Canadian invention. And I said to Mike, because he was from Waterloo and that's where he based his company, doesn't it strike you as ironic that you have decided to make your high-tech company build it in a place that's surrounded by all these Mennonites who will never use your product? And he said, no, you don't understand, Rob. The Mennonites are the backup plan for humanity. If and when our technological civilization falls because of an electromagnetic pulse or some other collapse of infrastructure, they'll sail on just fine. And I thought, that was a gift to me. Mike said that to me probably 15 years ago, and I've been lurking at the back of my mind. Well, I wanted to upload people, Waterloo. I wanted a collapse of civilizations when they download 500 years later. The only technological survivors are the prisoners and the astronauts, but they're surrounded by Mennonites who have been sailing on just fine with the horse and buggy technology they use for 500 years. So it's a puzzle of putting together things, or maybe more a better analogy is a recipe. You're trying to create a dish that has all kinds of different flavors and seasonings, and you know you've got it just right when it's piquant on every level.
Well, is there a reason why you chose astronauts as the, you know, the additional to the convicted murderers?
Yes, absolutely. Thomas Wolfe wrote this book, which was later made into a movie and then a miniseries called The Right Stuff, R-I-G-H-T, The Right Stuff. And it was this notion that astronauts somehow were better. They had this special quality. And yet I found, and for those who've watched, for instance, the Apple TV series For All Mankind recently, you see just how flawed these astronauts are. This right stuff, this machismo, this easy violence, this hard drinking, this philandering, all of this is actually very much the wrong stuff. And yet we idolize those people. Whereas the contrast with criminals who we all shun and reject, might actually have better hearts and more even tempers in a lot of cases than the people that we've made heroes out of. So the contrast, just like as I just said about flavors in a recipe, the contrasting flavors, the sweet and sour, side by side, is what makes the whole dish piquant and worth consuming.
Did you have a favorite character in this that you were writing?
Oh, I did. Roscoe Cadulean. Roscoe Cadulean, who is the character that the director, Greg Sinclair, and I immediately felt Brendan Fraser would be right for. Roscoe is indeed a convicted murderer. He did indeed kill a man. He did not kill the man in cold blood. As a middle-aged man, I think I say in the novel that he's 38 or 42. I think he's 38. He had started to be tormented online by somebody. And as he managed to track it down, it turned out it was the same bully who had tormented him in elementary school, who has now found him online and under a pseudonym is attacking him online. And Roscoe decides to go and confront his childhood bully. But unfortunately, things get out of hand and he just wants to tell him off and leave me, the heck alone. Things get out of hand and he does indeed grab a pair of garden shears that are open and stabs the guy in the heart. The guy dies. Roscoe really did commit murder. Didn't mean to commit murder. The guy he killed was arguably a worse person than Roscoe ever was. And I wanted, it's been said that all great fiction is in one form or another about redemption, about a character coming back into being an acceptable member of society. And this just seems such a natural path. So Roscoe Cadulean, the character played by Brendan Fraser, is my absolute favorite.
Well, what happens to your characters when the book's over?
Well, it's interesting because I genuinely don't like writing sequels, but the download, it just went through the roof for Audible. It was last month their #1 science fiction bestseller. I don't know what the sales are for this month, but last month it was #1, and that was 3 months after it came out. Still holding strong. So they asked me to prepare a sequel outline. And just, it's today Thursday as we talked. Yesterday, I submitted that sequel outline. I had no intention. So what I wanted at the end was for my characters to, you don't want them to live happily ever after. You're not writing fairy tales, but you want them to have reached a plateau in their life or a key moment in each of their life stories. And yet I've now gone and constructed a whole nother series about these same characters. And I'm certainly hoping Audible is going to commission that because as I say, they were the best creative partners I've ever worked with. And I'd like to do more with these characters.
Very exciting.
Yeah. You're going to call it The Uploaded?
So my original title, that was one of the working titles, absolutely. And then I mentioned that the main character's last name is Cadulean, which is an Armenian last name. And one of the things that we writers get to do from time to time is name characters after our friends. So Cadulean is named after a real friend of mine named Cadulean. But my original working title was The Downloaded to Electric Cadulean, if you remember.
I was going to make the Downloaded to Electric Boogaloo joke.
Well, there it is. It's the Electric Cadulean. And then I thought, no, that isn't right. So I have a Patreon account for those who want to support my work, and I had 2 possible titles that I had to decide one of just yesterday when I submitted the proposal. One was The Downloaded to Ghosts in the Machine, which is a reference to the famous phrase in psychology, ghost in the machine, referring to the mind being separate from the body. The mind is the ghost, the machine is the body, which certainly is apropos of uploading and downloading. And the other one is because I have in the sequel, duplication, an accidental duplication of the uploaded consciousness. So there's 2 of everybody. So my other title was The Downloaded to Second Thoughts, alluding to, oh, wow, there's another version of me having diverging thoughts as their life experiences change, but was originally me. I put on the first one, I put on The Downloaded to Ghosts in the Machine. But if it changes before the thing, comes to an Audible production or out in book form, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised. Most of my books, 25 now, most of them have had multiple title changes as the project has developed.
So you really liked doing these Audible, right? This was a really good experience.
It was
overall.
a great experience because, I say great creative partner because basically, unlike, I do work in film and television. One of my novels was adapted on ABC to a TV series called Flash Forward, starring Joseph Fiennes and John Cho. There, everything is, no, you got to change this, you got to change that, do this differently, we can't afford that, blah, blah, blah. Audible was, that's great, Rob. That's perfect, Rob. Wow, this is wonderful, Rob. That's what every author means when they say a great creative partner. They say one that left them the hell alone. It says, my friend Robert Silverberg, grandmaster science fiction writer, says the best review is 4,000 words of tightly reasoned praise. That's all any author wants, right? And that was essentially the feedback I got from my director and from Greg and from Jaleese Beaton, who was the executive at Audible that I was dealing with.
So when you get into this sort of computer stuff, what's your thoughts on AI and what's all the stuff going around about it now?
I had a meeting just 2 weeks ago with a producer who's trying to set up an adaptation of one of my books, Red Planet Blues. And we were talking to a production manager who said, well, it's going to take at least 18 months to get this, even if we sell it today, to get this to air. And I said, that's great. If we can get it on the air in 18 months, we're still in business. Because 36 months from now, all art is quite possibly going to be created by AI. And we're all going to be out of the business. The work that's being done, you look at it now and you say, okay, well, yeah, generative AI can make sort of a pastiche of Rob Sawyer or of Anne Perry or of H.G. Wells or whoever you want. It's okay. It's not bad. Today, better tomorrow. 3 years from now, it's going to be better. You want Rob Sawyer, but without that, left-wing liberal crap about socialized medicine? Just ask for it and you'll get it, right? Or whatever. And in terms of grading actors, George Lucas famously kept transitioning away from human actors. It was only fan outcry that made him keep Anthony Daniels in the C-3PO costume. He actually wanted to switch to a computer-generated C-3PO. And it was fan outcry that at least has a human puppeteer doing the so-called baby Yoda. In The Mandalorian, because Lucas and everybody else know it's way cheaper and easier to do all this stuff by CGI now. I was talking to one of my great colleagues, Spider Robinson, not at this Christmas that just, passed a couple of months ago, but Christmas a year ago. And he's older than me. He's 76 now, I guess. But he said, Rob, speaking of our careers in science fiction, we got in at the right time. We made out like bandits out at the right time. The era in which possible to have a middle class or above living as a writer of commercial fiction may very well be coming to an end very, very shortly because of AI. So I'm very, very concerned about this. Very concerned.
Well, that's depressing.
It is depressing. I wish I could be more, about the whole thing, but it is scary. It really is scary. It's the classic Jurassic Park thing, right? Where, the Jeff Goldblum character says you were so busy doing this, you didn't stop to ask yourself if you should be doing this, right? And the people who just blindly went ahead and dumped out into the world generative AI had given virtually no thought to what impact it was going to have. We were supposed to have machines that would take away all of the drudge jobs that no human being wanted to do and leave behind all the creative jobs, writing songs, acting in films, writing plays, writing books, performing in a rock band, leave all of that for us. And instead, the AIs are doing all of that. And we're still got people working in sweatshops and assembly lines as human beings.
Well, this has been a real downer.
Not my intention.
We're just all heading to the bar after this.
Al, what's interesting is, of course, your name rendered AL, was my brother's name too, in a sans serif font is indistinguishable from AI, the capital A, capital I. They look exactly the same. And so soon enough, House of Mystery Radio may well be AI instead of AI Ward instead of Al Ward. And they won't even have to change the title card. It looks exactly the same.
Probably be better too.
I don't know about that yet. But in 36 months, better than anything any human being could do. Not to denigrate, the great Alan R. Warren, but any human being will be outclassed.
In 36 months, I'll be an actual peach just talking.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
It will be, the pits.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Boo.
No, boo.
So this is fascinating. So listen, where do people find you? What do you like to have your readers come and interact and all that stuff? Websites, social media, what What do you
I
like?
was an early adopter of this thing we call the World Wide Web. I was the first science fiction writer in the entire world to have a website. And so I got a great URL for it. It's sfwriter.com. S is in science, F is in fiction, writer.com, sfwriter.com. Check it out there. And, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Patreon, I'm on the former Twitter, now known as X. I'm on Blue Sky. You can find me at TikTok. You can find me on social media. But Robert J. Sawyer Central is sfwriter.com, my website. Over 2 million words of material up there. You can spend days just browsing all of the articles, short stories, chapters, how to write advice, and so forth that's on there.
So what's next for you? What do you got going on now?
Well, it's interesting because Audible will either say yes, and I'll write the downloaded 2 immediately, or they'll say no, in which case I have a whole nother novel that I've outlined that I will start writing. And really, as I mentioned, I'm here in Calgary for a writing retreat that starts this weekend. It's the other novel, which actually is an AI-related novel, that I'm going to try and get written before AI can do it better than I can. But that's what I'll be starting up backward work on this weekend when the writing retreat starts here in Calgary.
Well, what happens when AI gets tired of humans?
That's a really good question. This is part of what this novel that I'm working on is about. Because why would AI keep us around? We're dangerous. We can pull out the plug, or we might start a nuclear war, or just one madman, whether it's here in the West or somewhere else in the world, decides to push the button. AIs get wiped, any computer gets wiped out by the electromagnetic pulses of a nuclear war. We might, ironically, better survive a nuclear war or an electromagnetic pulse from the sun than any computer could. So we're an impediment unless we provide value. And what is that value? Well, what do we provide? Companionship? Do we provide unpredictability? AIs can say, okay, here's all the things logically a person might do, but wow, who would have expected, that Kate, the Princess Kate would be doctoring her own photos of her family, right? And create a scandal and all that who would have, out of the blue craziness that human beings come up with. As long as we're entertaining, we might be kept around. But if it ever reaches the point in the calculus that the threat we present is greater than the entertainment or companion value or just physical hands and feet in the, on the ground in the real world, represent to the AI, we're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Well, I really appreciate you being on the show, and I'm going to go, shoot up or something because it's beginning of the end. I've got 3 years left.
You just have to keep really just making unhinged decisions, one per day, just to keep the AI on their toes.
You know what? I never quite thought that maybe I would be calling for more insanity in the real world as you just did. But perhaps it is our only hope is that we keep just being absolutely bonkers as a species and as individuals.
I think it would be hard to not be absolutely bonkers at this point.
Yeah, everybody's.
All things being equal. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, the book, the download it, and also, of course, the Audible, what you can get now. The creator, the author, Robert J. Sawyer. Thank you for being here.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Robert.
You've been listening to the House of Mystery radio show. To find out more about our guests, hosts, or show, go to www.houseofmystery.com.
Show's over for now.
Was it as good for you as it was for me?
Yeah. Good night.
This has been a production of Something Weird Media.
I'll be back.